You hated real estate before you got into it?
So I grew up in the stereotypical real estate family. My dad was one of the top realtors in the county. He worked his face off. He did extremely well. But there was a lot of times growing up where, it was his day to see me and he'd either show up late or not show up. I associated like him not being there with real estate.
You're still top 50 team in the US. You have close to 100 agents, mentoring over 10,000 agents, prolific investor, philanthropist, husband, father of two.
I've been in the industry for 20 years. I've been licensed for like 15. But I've just watched so many people just burn themselves out to the point they're having nervous breakdowns. Their families are falling apart. They're drug addicts. They're alcoholics. They end up in this horrible place. The likelihood of you selling your business and retiring off the money is slim to none. I'm really passionate about helping agents transition from being more than just a real estate agent.
Today I have Kyle Whissel, were you the number one team in San Diego for 7 years straight?
7 years, yeah. We relinquished the title last year, but we're on track to get that title back this upcoming year.
Nice. You're still top 50 team in the US. You have close to 100 agents, mentoring over 10,000 agents in your fast forward movement, prolific investor, philanthropist, husband, father of two. I was curious because I saw you hated real estate before you got into it. How come?
Yeah, so I grew up in the stereotypical real estate family. My dad, my parents were born and raised in Buffalo, New York. They moved here to San Diego a couple years before I was born, and my dad jumped into real estate as soon as he moved out here. So he was in real estate before I was born, and effectively I grew up in that real estate family. My dad was one of the top realtors in the county. He focused more on the commercial side, but he was that guy he worked his face off. He did extremely well, but sometimes that came at the cost of his time with me. My parents were divorced when I was 4, so always had split custody. There was a lot of times growing up where, it was his day to see me and he'd either show up late or not show up. Or I played sports my whole life, and there were times where he wouldn't make it to the game on time, or he wouldn't make it to the game at all. I had a lot of those like connections to real estate, and not that he wasn't a great dad. He was a fantastic dad and I love him to death, but there was just those things, right? I associated like him not being there with real estate. And so therefore I just didn't have like a positive relationship with real estate growing up. So never did I think I would get into real estate. While I was in college, my dad kept saying, you need to buy something, you need to buy something. And I was like, Dad, I scoop popcorn at a movie theater. Like, I can't afford to buy anything. And this was in the early 2000s. And he was basically like, here, if you can fog this mirror, they will give you a loan. And some stupid bank gave me a loan for $500,000 when I was 20 years old. And I ended up making $17,000 net after 3 months. And $17,000 net when I was still in college was a massive amount of money, especially when the movie theater had just offered me
It's a
a
lot.
huge nickel an hour raise. So at that point, I was like, all right, Dad, let's talk about this real estate thing. And then that's how I got into it.
Nice. So did that shape who you are, whether as like a leader or a parent, like having a father work 80 hours a week, split parenting, did that shape who you became today?
Yeah, and I've been like publicly sharing my calendar a lot lately. A lot of people have wanted to like get some insight into like what does a day look like for Kyle, and so I've been sharing it. And the thing that most people I've asked them like, hey, what's been the biggest surprise? You guys have seen literally my entire daily calendar. Or like, what's been the surprise? And it's that I'm home to my family by 6 o'clock every day. And I'm not working on Fridays and I don't work on the weekends. So basically Monday to Thursday, I leave the house at 8 and I'm home by 6, and I have like a 30 to 45-minute commute mixed in there. So I'm working a, a traditional work day, Monday to Thursday. Fridays, I'm trying to get Fridays off completely. I'm down to like 2 Zooms on a Friday, but I'm almost to the point I can completely take Fridays off. And that's been really eye-opening for people is that I'm not working 70 or 80 hours a week. But what I would say is that I get 70 or 80 hours worth of work done in the 33 to 34 hours a week that I do work. And I just obsess over time management, and really positioning myself to be in, where I can be at my highest and best use, and delegating everything else away, and then also trying to make wise investments that bring in income that don't require a lot of my time. So again, my objective is every Friday that I can take off with the family, and we have a house out at the river. We can go out there and, go boating and off-roading, or we have a house in Nashville. We can go out there. I want to be able to just on a whim any Friday, hey, let's go here, let's go there, and just travel and spend time with the family.
Nice. And I want to get to that because you've talked, you're really good on delegation and the highest and best use. Um, but I was curious now in context because you've worked with a lot of different people. You have a lot of different agents on your team in the movement. So I kind of want to touch on each step because I feel like there's definitely problems and roadblocks that everyone faces at each level of the business. And you're someone who's not just like a high recruiting team. You don't just say, hey, join my downline. You actually produced over 100 homes a year as a producer, as an agent. So speaking more towards those high performers, those people that they're putting a lot of time in and they're getting a lot out as a like a solo agent, what blocks them or what problems will they face making that transition to the next level?
Yeah, I think as you move up, you really have to understand what is your goal. So if your goal is to make $100,000 an hour, I figure there's 2,000 hours a year of workable hours. So therefore, your time is worth $50 an hour. So if you want to get to that $100,000 an hour income level, you have to think about everything that you do throughout your day and think, is this a 50 plus dollar an hour activity? If yes, then I do. If no, somebody else does. And then if you make it to that $100,000 number and you want to get to 200, well, guess what? That's now $100 an hour. So that $50 an hour task that you were doing, you can't do that anymore. You have to delegate that out and you have to let somebody else do that. And now you only do $100 an hour activities, so on and so forth, where you get to the point, where whatever that goal is, if it's a million, now it's $500 an hour. So you're just constantly having to think about where do you want to get to, and you have to drop all the tasks that are below that level so that you can focus on the things that are at or above that level. And the sooner you do that, the sooner you get to where you want to go. I mean, I'm like crazy obsessive about like not just hours, but I'm obsessive about minutes. Like this is one that a lot of people don't think about. We're in California, everybody drives EVs, but in other part, like I was just in Nashville, and I was like, man, I've seen
Mhm.
like two Teslas in a week here. Like nobody's driving them in other parts of the country, or not to the level here where every other car is a Tesla here. But if you think about like just driving a fuel-powered vehicle, how much time you spend at a freaking gas station every year. Like it's insane because most realtors, especially if you're working with buyers, like you're filling up at least once a week, right? And every time you fill up, you got to think about
They're
the amount
driving
of
all
time it
around.
takes you to one, you don't like, and I don't know anybody who plans their gas station trips. Like you fill up when you're empty. But let's assume even if you planned it, like you still got the time to get like off the freeway to get to the gas station. Then you got the time to like sit at the gas station to fill up. Then the time to get back on the freeway. Like it's at least 15 minutes every single time that you do it. And let's assume you fill up 4 times a month. That's an hour every single month that you're spending just dealing with filling up the gas in your car. Like that's crazy. That's 12 hours a year that you spend at a gas station. And that's
Yeah.
if you fill up 1 time a week. A lot of my friends are filling up twice a week. You're spending an entire day at the gas station. Like that's insane to me. So like just by driving an EV, you're getting back 12 to 24 hours. Like you're getting an entire day
someone like may look at it and they could say, well, I could hire someone to like walk my dog, do my laundry, like come clean the house, make meals. Like, is there an end? Like, how do you kind of think through that? Like, what do you delegate? What do you spend money to buy back your time?
Yeah, I mean, at some point there has to be an end to it. You have to do some stuff on your own, but man, I do very, very little. Unless I really enjoy it. Like, there's just some weird things that you just kind of enjoy doing. Like, I have friends who like to mow the lawn. Like, they like to get on their John Deere and ride around and mow their lawn, like, and have a beer. Like, if that fills your cup and it makes you happy, like, cool. Like, do that. But if you're doing activities and you've just are like literally asking yourself, like, why am I doing this? Like, those are the ones you got to get rid of. So just think about that stuff all the time. Like, what are you doing? Does this make sense? And maybe it's below your level, but it really, really fills your cup and it makes you happy. Happy is important. It's not just about money, it's about happiness too. So if something like truly makes you happy, but where people make the mistake is I talked about this with my team yesterday is like when you're doing an open house, you should go around the neighborhood and invite everybody to come to the open house. And here's the flyer that we use. Now, there's two things you can do with that flyer. You can either just go to each door and tuck it underneath the doormat, or you can knock on the door. And if you're going to knock on the door, fantastic. That's a $500 an hour activity. Like, that's one of the most valuable uses of time you have. But if you find yourself going around and just sliding them under the doormats, like, that's not an activity that any agent should be doing. Like, and I use this analogy that's it's a little strong, but sometimes you have to use strong analogies to get people to have an emotional reaction. Is like in my old neighborhood, the top realtor there, when I was younger, literally hired the homeless guy that's on the corner begging every day to be the one who goes and drops these things under people's doormats. So it's like the next time you think about doing that yourself, like in my old neighborhood, the homeless guy's the one that
That's
did that.
funny.
Like that's not okay. But people in their head, they're like, well, I still got to pay the homeless guy $10 an hour. I got the time, so I'll just do it myself and I'll save the $10. Like, okay, you're not wrong that you save $10, but you also cost yourself, let's assume we're on the 100,000, you cost yourself $50, right? Because there's that opportunity cost. So at the end of the day, the net effect is you lost $40 to save $10. Like, that's not okay. So people have to think about that, but a lot of people don't understand the value of their time. But if they actually understood the value of their time, they would think about these things a lot differently.
So, do you walk all of your new agents kind of through that like thought process?
Yeah, we go through a whole exercise where we break down to them like, here's your expected dials to contact rate. Here's your contact to appointment rate. Here's your appointment to close rate. Here's your average commission. We break them down through some just basic conversion numbers. But what it ends up resulting to them is helping them realize every time they make a dial, it's worth 20 bucks. Every time they have a conversation, it's worth 200 bucks. Every time they go on an appointment, it's worth 2,000 bucks. And if you start to think about things that way of like, man, every time I pick up the phone, it's worth $20 or just to make a dial, it's worth 20 bucks. And then if they answer, it's worth 200 bucks. And then if I said go on an appointment, it's 2,000 bucks. Like if you actually had somebody who broke it down to you to understand that not just telling you get on the phone, you got to work the phones, Andrew, work the phones, like you got to do the phones. Like if somebody actually broke it down to you and showed you proven statistics that every time you make a dial, it's worth 20 bucks, it's a lot easier to make the dials. But if somebody's just like, Andrew, go make the phone calls, you're like, yeah, no, let's not. So we break it down so they really understand it, and then we attach it to what their annual goal is. And I have a spreadsheet that I built. So if any of you guys want it, just DM me on Instagram at Kyle Whissel. I'll send you the spreadsheet. You can go punch in what your annual goal is. So then you could say, hey, I want to make $100,000 a year. And now it'll tell you every day you have to make this many dials, this many contacts, this many appointments. And it breaks it down literally to the day based on what the goal is. And so we go through that exercise with our agents so they can understand how important prospecting is and how valuable those dials are that we're telling them to make. And then we help them build their calendar from the top down, which starts with family religion at the top. Nothing replaces that. Prospecting below that, right? And go through the 10 different things that build out your calendar in order of importance.
That's So when it comes to like numbers, like especially if you talk to you talk to a lot of salespeople with all your agents, like visionaries, high performers, like it's very easy to put like ostrich head in the sand, not look at the numbers, not look at your bank account, just keep making money, keep making calls. But like something small, for example, like I just started 75 hard. Like I've tracked my food before when I was losing weight. I was overweight. But recently, yesterday, when I put my food in, I was like, wow, like I'm way under. And I didn't even realize it. And that's kind of how I was normally eating. And I was like, man, just looking at the numbers gives you an awareness of like where you actually stand in a place. Do you find that as like a pretty impactful thing for like new agents to like really look at the numbers and dial in?
Yeah, I mean, it's really eye-opening to see the numbers play out, especially if I tell you something and then you do it and then the numbers align with what I told you to do. Like that's impactful. But then it's also impactful to see that like let's say that the numbers that I ran that scenario with assume you close 1 out of 4 appointments you go on. Well, if you could track historically that you're closing 1 out of 4 appointments and you realize that other people in the office are closing 2 out of 4 appointments, if you can put more energy and effort into closing the appointments that you go on and increase from 1 out of 4 to 2 out of 4, you're actually making twice as much money. Or some agents you work half as hard to make the same amount of money.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we like to track the ones that realize they can make twice as much. So when they can actually see that and be like, oh, if I put more energy and effort in here, this is the result, or that. So, and I think of it like it's like a hose. And if water's coming out of the spigot, but it's not coming out the end of the hose, there's a kink somewhere in the hose. And if we can figure out, like, all right, we're having the dials, we're having the contacts, but we don't have the appointments, like the kink is in the contact to appointment category. So how can we focus on that and make that better? Or now we have the appointments, but we don't have the closings. Like, all right, what's happening at the appointment? So we could figure out where's that kink in the hose, and now it helps, for agents have some self-realization. For me as a team leader, helps me coach my agents better on where the kink is for them so that we can get the water flowing.
It's essentially looking for the problem so you can give them the right solution. And
Yeah.
talking about like, I don't love talking about like the market because it's not as much evergreen, but it is a tough, challenging market. And that is pretty common. Like, there's challenging markets every so often, it's just the cycle. What are like some things that you're telling your agents, like tactically, hey, these are the three, five, or 10 things that you need to be doing no matter what in this market to succeed?
Yeah, so here's a cool thing. This is like a mindset shift. I got into residential during the foreclosure crisis. And what I realized back then is all of the people who were buying those foreclosed homes, that they were buying them
Hmm.
at substantially discounted prices. And that the bottom we would pass at some point, and didn't know if it was going to be a year, two, three, how long it was going to be, but that these people were buying these homes near a bottom. And when the market turned around, they were going to sell those homes. And so all the effort that I put in to help all those buyers during that time period, those became my listing opportunities years later when those values shot up. And that little condo they bought in the hood for 100 grand is, and I bought one. I posted about this recently. I bought a condo in the hood for 100 grand, and now obviously the market turned around. I sold the condo for 100, and I bought $1 million house in Nashville. Like, there's so many clients that we work with that are in that scenario where they bought in this tough market, and now, but all those buyers that we worked with are now this listing inventory. And now you have that same scenario right now because all of your people who are buying today, right? We're here in the middle of 23, like all your clients who are buying today at like a 6.5, 7% rate, guess what? They're not buying the house they really want. Like, they're sacrificing, right? They can't afford what they
Yep.
really want. They're having to just say, well, this is what I can afford, so I'll take it. It's better than renting. But guess what happens when those rates come back down? They're going to sell that house they don't really want, and then they're going to go buy the house they do really want. So, yes, it's freaking hard to work with buyers right now. I get it, right? You got to convince them that it's okay to buy at a 7% rate, that rates are going to come down. And our market's super competitive, and most markets across the country are competitive. So it's hard to get an offer accepted. But understand this, those buyers, those are your sellers for the next 5 to 10 years of your career. So just suck it up and work hard, play the long game, and realize that all that energy and effort you're putting in right now, it's going to pay dividends for you over the career. So that's a big thing that
Yeah,
we've really
and
been instilling in our agents right now.
that's awesome because it's kind of funny because we literally just bought like this year in 2023 at a high rate, and this is not our forever home. So like I'm someone sitting across the computer screen from you telling you that's true.
Yeah,
it's
there's
it's kind
so
of
many
funny how
people. Yep. So yeah, I mean that's a big thing we're
it.
telling our agents right now, and then we're just telling them, look, this is a hard time. Like I think the most recent data, there's already like 60,000 people who've left the industry, like, and there's going to be a few 100,000 that leave the industry, and that's great. Like when times get tough, like you're going to have a lot of people that just check out that don't want to put the work in. So those that work harder, right, and then the rates are going to come down and the inventory is going to come back, there's going to be less people fighting over that same pie. And that's going to create opportunity as well. So, if you're watching this, listening to this, like, yeah, it's freaking hard right now, but you have such a big opportunity. If you can do well in this market, that's about as tough as it gets, especially for a newer agent. If you can do well in this market, you're going to freaking slay for the next 5 or 10 years. So just keep going.
Yeah, think long term. Just because it's a buyer doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I know everyone wants listings because listings it's more predictable. You you can build a system around it. You can also build a system for buyers too. You're you're known for turning like one listing into three, five listings. Is there something that you're doing now? Like, are you really refining that system right now and maximizing every listing?
Yeah, so when we tell our agents, like, it's so hard to get a listing right now. Like, listings are everything. When you get one, don't get excited you got a listing that you're going to sell. Like, you just got this, like, golden ticket, right? I think about, like, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. You got the freaking golden ticket. You got the listing. Like, get the most out of this thing. And so we think about every listing, there's 5 opportunities to get a transaction out of it. One, sell the damn listing. You don't get paid to take a listing, you get paid to sell a listing. So one, you got to sell the listing. Two is whoever is selling is going to move somewhere. 90% of the time they're going to buy, whether we're in California, so usually they're leaving and going to some other state, but you can get the referral in that other state. A lot of agents forget about that. They're just like, oh, well, they're leaving, they're going to Texas. Well, find a freaking agent in Texas and get paid. Like, there's a transaction that's going to happen there. Get yours, right? Get your piece of that. And then if they're staying locally, obviously you're going to help them buy locally. So that's number two. Number three is you're going to do such an amazing job for that client that they're going to want to refer somebody to you, right? They're going to be so ecstatic. You did a phenomenal job, Andrew. You crushed it. Like this was so great. My friend Sally's thinking about selling too. Can you help her? Fantastic. Number four is you're going to double end the listing. So you're going to really, really work your face off and do everything you can to procure a buyer for that and ultimately double end it, which is going to be number four. And then you're going to have done such a good job through this entire process. You're going to make sure everybody in the neighborhood knows that you did it. And you're going to get the next listing in the neighborhood, which is number five. And so we're trying to figure out how can we get as many of those 5 transactions as possible out of that one single listing. My favorite way to do it is, again, door knocking. Like I think it's one of those things that most people are not willing to do. Everybody wants to text and post on social media, but nobody wants to call, nobody wants to knock. So the agents who are willing to make calls and willing to knock, they're going to position themselves in a much better spot than those that won't. And so what I love is there's kind of 4 opportunities I see to go and leverage your listing. So you can go to everybody in the neighborhood and knock, knock. Hey, Andrew, Kyle. You probably saw we have a coming soon sign up around the corner over on 123 Main Street. Want to just, come talk to the neighbors. I found a lot of times neighbors want to pick their own neighbor. Who do you know who's looking to move in the neighborhood who'd be a good neighbor for you? Oh, and nobody comes to mind. Okay, cool. Well, Andrew, how long have you been in the neighborhood? And this is like a Mike Ferry script. Like, how long have you been in the neighborhood? Oh, cool. Have you ever had any thoughts of moving? If you did move, where would you go? When would you want to get there? What would take you there, right? I'm going to go through all those
Hmm.
questions. So I'm going to hit you when it's coming soon. Then I'm going to hit you a second time when I'm doing my big open house. If you want, just Google Kyle Whissel open house. You can have my whole open house plan. We do these big open houses, wine and cheese, sushi and sake. We do all kinds of like big events. And I'm gonna go knock again. Hey, Andrew, remember that house I told you is coming soon around the corner? Well, I wanted to invite you this Friday night. We're gonna have wine, we're gonna have cheese. I'm inviting all the neighbors in to come, see the home before it goes live. Wanted to invite you to come by, and then boom, I'm going to the same script. I just want to check in and see if anybody's come to mind, right? And then I'm just rolling with it. So I'm hitting you a second time. Then I'm gonna hit you a third time when we go pending. And I'm gonna say, hey, Andrew, remember that house I told you about? We were having the wine and cheese event the other night. Well, great news, Andrew. We got 10 offers on that home and we're under contract above what we had it listed at. Well, Andrew, you know what that means, right? That's 9 people that wanted that home that didn't get it. So I wanted to just reconnect. I know when we talked the first time, you said you didn't have any thoughts of making a move, but there's 9 people that are fighting to get in this neighborhood. I mean, is there any chance you might be open to entertaining an offer from them? No? Okay, well,
Mm.
is there anybody else in the neighborhood, like anybody who comes to mind who might be open to it? Because this home, again, this thing went over the list price. Like, is there anybody you can think of in the neighborhood? No? Okay, great. Now I'm going to come back when it's sold. Fourth time. Andrew, remember the house I told you, the open house? We had 10 offers. Well, good news, it's officially closed. So I can tell you that home ended up selling for $1 million. It's $100,000 over what we had it listed at. And then you're like, wow, okay, cool. I just want to check in one last time. You can tell I'm a hungry go-getter. I'm out there, I'm hustling. Like, I got 9 buyers who missed that home that
Yep.
want it. And with $1 million is now the comp, I could probably get you that same number, if not more. Is there any chance you'd be open to entertaining an offer? All right, well, one last time. Is there anybody else in the neighborhood? So if you could just do those four and you knock it and call it, if you did that on every one of your listings, I guarantee you're getting 2 to 3 of those 5 every single time.
That's nice, and that uses the Phil Jones "Are you open-minded?" uh, phrase that he likes to use. That I know came way before him too.
Yeah.
um, so, is that like a single agent? Like they're doing all of that door knocking? I assume you're also sending mail, email. Like you're hitting land, air, sea, multiple avenues.
Assuming you can, and if you're new, you might not have the check equity to send direct mail. That's cool. Guess what? The agent who does have the check equity, meaning they have cash in the bank and can afford to send direct mail, they're probably not knocking. They're probably not calling. So you could look at it as like a negative that you don't have any money, but you have time, and the agent who has the money might not have the time. So take advantage of what you do have, be a glass half full kind of person, and use that time that you have to go knock and to make the phone calls because the top agent in town's not doing that stuff anymore.
Uh, yeah, I see. Having kind of like two lines of thoughts, like you can do this, but if you have time, but not a lot of money, spend your time. But if you have a lot of money, not a lot of time, then spend your money. Essentially the
Yep.
same delegation, buy back your time principle.
Yeah,
Nice.
if you go, I mean,
And
my competitors might be watching this. Like, if you want to take over my old farm, like, go knock it, because I'm not. Like, I'm just mailing to them. If you want to try to take me out, like, go knock where I used to sell. Like, and you might be able to take me out because I don't have the time to do that. And same thing, like, if there's a neighborhood you want to take over, and you're like, oh, well, Sally's been here for 20 years. Like, have you seen Sally out there knocking doors? Probably not. Go knock them, and they'll be like, oh man, Sally just sends me like cooking recipes. Like, you're out here hustling. Like, I respect that. They give you a chance, and then you make the most of it.
yeah, nice. I like that. So I want to kind of transition to that next phase because you've jumped from 82 to 242 transactions, and then you worked with someone else, Colton. I think you helped like 300% his business.
Yeah.
So that team leader who's either a brand new team leader, they're either producing, maybe not consistently, the business isn't self sufficient, they're having to either continually recruit or they're the one driving the business isn't like driving itself. Why what do you why does that happen, and what's the solution to like fixing that?
So effectively, how to like get out of production, or at least taper back on your production? Is that kind of where you're going?
Yeah, like how do you scale from being a uh just a team leader with like a few agents, or just the production is going well, but
Yeah.
you don't actually, you're not like the CEO of the business quite yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would say one big thing would be to implement a system to help you run your business. And I found I've done coaching with a lot of different real estate coaches, and very few of them teach you how to run a business. They teach you about the new app, the new widget, the new lead source, like all that stuff, because that's sexy and it sells coaching. But very few of them teach you how to run a business. And so I realized I just wasn't going to find that in the real estate space. So I went outside of the real estate space and I found a system called EOS, stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it really teaches you how to run a true business. It's not made for real estate, it's not made for podcasting, it's not made for painting walls. It's made for running a business, any business. And I would strongly recommend you guys look into EOS. There's a book if you want to learn more about it called Traction by Gino Wickman.
Great book.
And you can learn a lot more about running this system, but it really takes you from being a realtor to being a business owner. And that would be my number one recommendation for anybody who's kind of struggling and you just feel like you're going to, die door knocking and just you're going to sell houses forever, but you actually want to build a business, right? Like we were talking earlier, like I've built a business that allows me to travel every single weekend. If you want to build a business like that, one, you got to delegate like we talked about, and two, you got to put a system in place that runs your business so it's not 100% dependent on you 24/7.
I'm gonna assume you're a visionary, or are you an
Oh yeah,
integrator?
I'm a horrible integrator. I got all kinds of visions, probably to a fault, but I got a good integrator who just, he's running around catching all these ideas that I have, and he sifts and sorts through them, figure out which ones it makes sense to integrate into the business. And then more importantly, what he does is he thinks about the things I don't. I just think like, hey, I heard somebody's using this, it works, let's do it. Like he's like, well, what about how does it connect to this system and how does it affect that and how are we going to process it? Like he thinks through all those things that I don't think about, and so it's super beneficial to have somebody like that around.
So did you build out like your SOPs? Like, did you like all that before the integrator, or did the who matter more than you building it?
EOS forced us to like really systemize the business. And then we use a product called Trainual, which has really, really helped as we've scaled up because we've gone, when we came over to EXP 5 years ago, we were like 20 something agents. Now we're over 100 agents. And so as you scale up in a business, you've got to have not only the right people, but you got to have some really good systems in place. And Trainual is huge for us because there's two key components to it. There's an LMS component, which stands for Learning Management System. So that's where we can have all of our training for our agents so they can understand how to use all of our different systems and understand how our processes and everything work. And we do our training as a hybrid between the online and Trainual along with the in-person, because you can't just put somebody in front of a computer and be like, go watch these videos for a week and then talk to me. Like you got to do hands-on training too.
Yeah.
So Trainual gives us that LMS component, but then on the flip side, there's an FAQ component too, or frequently asked question component, which is really, really valuable because there's so many questions that agents have, and we just kind of pay attention. Anytime an agent asks a question, if we're like, hey, that's a good question, somebody's probably going to have that same question down the road. We put it into Trainual in our FAQs, and now we teach our agents, anytime you have a question, you always go to Trainual first, ask your question there. If the answer doesn't exist, then ask us, right? And then even at that, first they have a mentor, they ask their mentor first. And then if they can't get it from their mentor, then they'll ask it in Slack, which is our internal communication system. So we try to really have it like, and we literally give them a document. It's like, go here, then here, then here. So people know where to find the information. And by putting time into the LMS and the FAQ and Trainual, like that saves our admin team so much time having to answer the same questions over and over and over again. At the same time, it's valuable for our agents because they don't have to come ask questions. They're not dependent on me or anybody on my team to answer the questions. The system's answering it for them. And agents, especially new agents, when they're up against a wall, like they want the answer now. And if it's dependent on me, they're not going to
Yeah.
get that answer now. And now they get frustrated because they don't get answers and their deal falls apart. So by having all that stuff built out, they can get the answers they need when they need them, and they feel a lot better about things.
I can. So Slack's awesome. Trainual is pretty awesome. I've looked into it. I can imagine someone who is either they're the one producing heavy for the team, or they're still heavy in recruiting, they may say, "Oh, well, it's going to take a lot of time to build all that out." Or,
Yeah.
but there's also the concept of slowing down to speed up. So, how do you either force that time, or how do you find that time? What did you do that worked in order to start building it out from zero?
Yeah, I think, like you said, you got to slow down to speed up. You have to understand that you're making a long-term investment, that the time that it's going to take you to build this stuff out is going to save you massive, massive, massive amounts of time in the long haul. The other thing, as you scale up, like, is letting go of the buyers so that you can get some of that time back. Like, it's okay to like, let go of some of your business so that you can focus on other things that are going to actually help the business grow significantly faster. And if it's hard for most people in the beginning. They won't give up the good buyers, only give up like the shitty buyers or the low priced buyers. And that's fine. Like, cool, whatever. At least you're giving something up. And now you give up like this $100,000 land lead that you had no desire to work, and somebody converts it for you, and you still got paid. You're like, oh, this isn't so bad, and you start to get a little more confidence in letting go. And now you give them like the $300,000 condo buyer, and then they close that, and you get paid where you probably wouldn't have closed that before. And you're like, oh, this actually makes a lot of sense. So, and then you start getting to the point where literally yesterday I gave up a $5 million buyer to one of my agents because I know two things. One, I'm not going to do well with that buyer. I don't have the time or
No.
the desire to run around town and show property. So this person, the client's going to get much better attention, the attention they deserve, especially at 5 million. And I just handed an agent a $5 million buyer. Like, how does that agent leave me? Like, when they're like, dude, if I leave Kyle, I don't get that ever again. Like, that will never happen again. Nobody's ever going to hand me a $5 million buyer. So now I built loyalty in with that agent to where they have zero desire to leave because I'm making sure that I take care of them. And I'm still going to get paid. And the odds are he's going to convert it at a higher rate than I would have converted if I kept it myself. And he's going to provide a better experience, which is going to, help me with my branding. So as soon as you get it in your head that it's okay to do that, that's when you can really start to grow. You got to get out of the car if you really want to grow a big business. You can't run a business from your car. And now some people could argue there's an anomaly here and there that does, but for the most part, it's really hard to run a business from a car. You just can't do it.
Yeah. And so, as you're growing, because you've mentioned like the coaches in real estate, they don't really teach you like how to actually build a business, so you had to seek out. Um, when you were growing, did your profit margins change? Like you had growth phases of like, okay, look, I'm probably not going to make this much in this time period, but I'm doing this to grow.
Absolutely.
Like,
And a lot of people don't run their P&L the right way. I mean, a lot of people don't even have a P&L, which is a whole nother problem. But if you're running a P&L the right way, you're running a P&L for your business and you're running a P&L for yourself in your own production. So if you're running your P&L right now, where every time you do a deal, 100% of your commission goes onto your team P&L, you're doing it wrong. Because what's going to happen is when you step away from production and now that number drops down because all those deals are going to agents, your business is going to appear that it's now losing money. But it wasn't actually making money before.
yeah,
What you should be doing is you should be on a split. You should have yourself on a split, and a percentage goes to the team and a percentage goes to you. Because eventually you are going to be out and somebody else is going to be in, and now all that money is not going to go to the team. So in order to run a P&L properly, you should have yourself on a split if you're still in production. So that way, when you step out, you don't have that dip that most people experience because you've been running your P&L as though you were an agent the entire time. Because you as an agent and as a team, those are two different businesses that should have two different P&Ls, and most people don't do that. So if you do it the right way, you don't actually have that same dip. But most people have the dip because they don't run it that way, self-included. And I'm not saying that I did it the right way either. I've learned since if I would have done it the right way, I wouldn't have felt that dip because I wasn't actually profitable as a company. I was profitable as an agent, but not as a company. And when you take me out as the agent, now it all falls apart.
I like that. It's isolating the thinking again. It's like you're like, hey, my business is profitable, but it's like your personal production is profitable, but the business isn't profitable, which kind of goes to like one of the most important things is like paying yourself a salary versus just like trying to take home 80 to 100% of
Yep.
the money.
Yeah,
So,
and dude, I learned this where I learned this lesson was when I used to have my own brokerage before we went to EXP, and I had companies that approached me about buying my company. And I was like, heck yeah, this is going to be great. I'm going to sell this thing for millions of dollars. And when they actually analyzed my company, they took my production out because they realized like once
uh,
they buy you, you're gone. Like that production's not going to be there. So that was where I learned that I was doing it wrong was that when you sell your company, if you ever do, they're going to back your production out of the equation. So if you know that's how your company is going to be valued, shouldn't you run your P&L the way that your company is going to be valued by a potential buyer?
yeah, that's good. Again, a lot of long-term thinking. Like, don't just think short-term, take home the money.
Yeah.
So, uh, you mentioned we talked about the integrator. I just want to touch on that like shortly. How do you find like a great? How did you find your integrator?
Yeah. So my integrator didn't come in to be an integrator. He came in to run, for all intents and purposes, we'll call it an ISA department for me. It was tied to a project we did with Zillow, but effectively to run an ISA department for me. And it became clear that he was much more than somebody running an ISA department. He was somebody who wasn't just thinking about like the phone call. He was thinking about like the whole global, vision of what's happening. It was like, all right, help me understand where does the lead come from? When the lead comes in, how does it get into the system? What happens, right? How do we follow up? What do we do? Like I just saw that he just thought differently than a
Mm,
typical ISA or salesperson does. And I started to realize like this, he's just wired very, very differently. He thinks about everything from end to end, and as we go through all the different things that are affected along the way. And so he grew into that role. He was not hired for that role. And I think, if you're going to hire somebody as an integrator or what's more commonly referred to as a COO, if you're going to hire somebody, like I think you need somebody who's very, very strong in project management and people management. I would say if there's like two specific skills, you need somebody who knows how to manage projects and knows how to manage people. Because the integrator, I think it's like an hourglass kind of shape. Like I'm up here, I have like these 5 million ideas. I give them to him. He figures out like the one or two ideas that make sense and then integrates them to the rest of the company. And then if the company has issues, concerns, questions, it comes to him. He filters through all of their stuff and then only disseminates what I need to hear back up to me. So he's kind of like the middle of the hourglass, and that is so freaking valuable. And it's not an easy skill. He's super talented, and so the ability to manage the projects, the people, and he's having to take all the shit from me and from them simultaneously. Like that's not an easy role for somebody.
yeah, that way it's like you don't have a lot of people direct reporting to you. It's mainly him,
It's pretty much him.
and
Yep.
probably some others. Okay,
Yeah, just the leadership team only. But I'm very shielded from the agents. We have a ton of virtual assistants. Like I'm shielded from a lot of that stuff.
nice. I like that. The two, they have to be a project manager and a people manager. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah.
So transitioning to like a $500 billion team, um, you want to go. Earlier, you mentioned you want to go from a 4 day work week to a 4 hour work week. Why is that important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I am all about living life. Like, I have this mindset that I grew up very differently. I just liked where I lived. I didn't like to travel. I didn't like to experience other cultures. Like, I just felt like I'm happy and everything. But the way I look at life now is like, we're going to be here one freaking time. And if the only thing I know in life is like my one little city, if I just know San Diego and nothing else, like, did I really live? Like, that's the way I just look at life. So, we're in this big giant world, and I want to experience as much of this world as I can while I can, because there's no do-overs in this game. You don't get to come back and do it over differently the second time around. Like, this is your time. And so I really want to build a business that allows me to experience as much of this world as I possibly can. So my goal right now is kind of on a 5-year plan of working my face off and building as many businesses as I can. I'm doing a lot of wealth building stuff now and building developments and positioning myself to where 5 years from now, like, I don't have to work. So that I can go travel. And I have a newborn. She's 9 months old now. So once she's 5, like, she's walking, she's talking, she's listening, and she can sit on a plane. Like, I want to be on planes all the time. I want to be traveling and just experiencing the world.
Is is there like one place that you just really want to go to on your list?
Africa, Africa
Africa?
for sure. Yeah.
How
I want to
how
go to
come?
Zambia more specifically. One, I want to just go on like one of those wild safaris where I'm just out in the middle of
Safaris?
nowhere, like true like hardcore safari, and I'm out in the wilderness. Like, I've always wanted to do that. We're here in San Diego. We have a zoo and this other thing called a safari park, and like, I love the animals, but I hate seeing them like in these little cages and confined areas. Like, to be out, see them in their element in the wilderness. Like, I want to see that so bad. And there's this place called Victoria Falls, which is an insane place. You literally like jump out. It's called Devil's Armchair. It's part of Victoria Falls, and you're literally like sitting on the edge of this waterfall that's hundreds of feet high, and you're like get to hang over the edge. It's wild. Like, go on YouTube and type in Devil's Armchair and look at some of the videos. Like, it just looks insane, and I love those kind of experiences where like you could die. That's kind of, but you're not going to. And I love that kind of stuff.
Nice. So bring this kind of all full circle. Does this kind of stem from like your father, or is this kind of like you want to pass on experiences and culture to your kids, or is it just something
Yeah,
else?
I didn't get enough of that for sure. Like, we didn't travel a whole lot. I didn't get a lot of those. Like, other than going back to Buffalo to visit family, like, didn't do a ton of travel. So I really want my kids to have a different lens of the world, and it, let's go fly somewhere with a one-way ticket, and let's not even know where we're gonna go next, right? Like, we know we're gonna land in Zambia. Where we're gonna go from Zambia, I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll stay as long as we're having a good time there, and when that adventure ends and it's time to start a new one, we'll go somewhere else. Like, I would love to have my kids live that kind of lifestyle, and just learn these different cultures and different languages and customs and all that stuff. Like, I think that would be so fun for my kids, and to watch them grow as from little babies into girls into women, like, and have these well-rounded women is going to be really exciting for me.
That's awesome because it's definitely easy as like a high performer to get in the mindset of, oh, I just want to build the business and kind of shut out everything else. I just got married this past year. Obviously, we're talking about kids, but it's more like 3 years down the line for us right now. Um, what's what are you hoping with everything you build, everything that you do? What's the legacy that you want to leave to your kids or the world?
Yeah, so I mean, I have my wealth plan set up right now where half the money goes to charity. So I've already earmarked that. I lost my mom to breast cancer. My dad's been through 3 different cancers. So I already have it set up to half of my money is just going to charity to just try to help fight that awful freaking disease. So that's a big thing that I want to do. I really want to try to make an impact there, and push that ball as far down the road as I can. I can't be the one to solve it, but if I can get us closer to a solution like that, that's huge for me. So that's a big part of the legacy that I want to live. Um, and ultimately, I just would love to have, a reputation where people think of my name. It's whatever they think of as a positive thing, that had a positive impact on them, a positive impact on the world. And I would just love, that's the legacy to me, is just anytime my name is thought of, it immediately evokes a positive emotion in one, way or another.
So I saw that you have the wealth and wellness retreat in
Yeah.
July. Is that kind of
Yeah.
part of it?
Yeah, I mean the thing I've watched, and I used to go to a ton of real estate events. I mean, I was at an event every, couple weeks it felt like. And what I found with a lot of these real estate events, I mean, we talked a little bit earlier, like none of these real estate coaches teach you how to run a
Hmm.
business, nor do they teach you how to take the money that you're making from the business and actually build wealth with it. They just teach you like, all right, here's the next new thing, the next new thing, and you just keep putting your money into the business, and you never actually building anything. And we're in a business like real estate businesses are not very sellable. The multiples are crap on real estate businesses compared to a lot of other businesses out there. So, the likelihood of you
Hmm.
selling your business and retiring off the money is slim to none. So, I'm really passionate about helping agents transition from being more than just a real estate agent and actually building some wealth for themselves and for their family when they're gone. I have a huge passion for that. I also have a huge passion for actually living a well life. I think we get, this, like I said, my dad works 70, 80 hours a week, and a ton of real estate agents are, just grinding so hard. They're just wearing themselves out and exhausting themselves. They're not actually taking care of themselves. And so I wanted to do something that kind of combines my passion for both of those things together. So we're doing an event in July, again, it's called a Wealth and Wellness Retreat, where it's just focused on those two things. It's not in a big giant hotel in a ballroom. And it's all about happy hours and parties and all this stuff. We're not sitting there for 8-hour days in a ballroom writing notes. Like we're gonna really focus on like how can we actually build something that's going to create a wealthy life that doesn't, end our life death by door knocking. So I want to make sure that we create something where we don't have to work until, I know so many agents are 80, 90 years old still working. Like that's, I mean, hey, if that makes
Yeah.
them happy, so be it. But that's not the way that I see my life ending happily. So I want to help people build wealth. And there's so many things that I've learned along the way, all these different investment vehicles and tax savings vehicles and all these things that I've learned. And I really like to share it. That fills my cup. And then we're doing it at this amazing wellness resort. It's just outside of San Diego in Tecate, Mexico, called Rancho La Puerta. And it's this wellness retreat that's been around for 80 plus years. And some places call themselves like a wellness retreat because they have like a spa and you can get a facial and a massage. Like that's bullshit. Like this is a true wellness retreat. You're going down there. They have world-renowned speakers coming down and they're teaching you breath work and meditation, and you're doing guided hikes, and you're eating healthy, and you're not getting wasted every single night. You're doing yoga and breath work and all these things, really taking care of your mind and your body. And I think that's an area that a lot of us realtors neglect. And so I'm really passionate about sharing my journey with wealth and wellness with others, and doing something a little different than the traditional real estate event. And this is small. We're doing like 20
Nice.
people on this first one. So yeah, I'm excited for that. If you guys are watching this, if you want more info, just DM me on Instagram at Kyle Whissel, and I can shoot you the details.
Yeah. DM him, check it out. I was curious because so I've had someone in Compass like he's huge into wellness, and he's trying to implant it into the Compass network. I've had Amit. He's talked about all the people he's met that contacted him about like suicide. So I was curious what why is wellness important to you? Is there any specific reason?
I have not had anybody specifically in the real estate space where I've dealt with suicide, but I've just watched families fall apart. I've watched bodies
Okay.
fall apart. I've just watched so many people. I've done this for I've been in the industry for 20 years. I've been licensed for like 15. But I've just watched so many people just burn themselves out, to the point they're having nervous breakdowns. Their families are falling apart. They're drug addicts. They're alcoholics. They end up in this horrible place. And I mean, gosh, we're in this industry, like we can literally make NFL money in this industry, but like we're tearing ourselves apart to do it. And so I really want to help people live more balanced lives, and combined with wealth, like because a lot of realtors, it's like they're just living from commission check to commission check. If we can actually help them build something
Yep.
that's not dependent on the next sale, that gives them more time to actually take care of their bodies. So the two go hand in hand. And again, not just their body, your mind is almost more important. So if I can help people to build something where they're truly happy and fulfilled, and not working those 70, 80 hours a week and letting everything crumble around them, like that, it just, again, it fills my cup. That's the stuff I'm most passionate about right now.
Nice. Yeah, it's kind of why I started 75 hard was to shock my body. There's this concept of misogi where it's like putting yourself, your mind, your body through a shock and a change. So it's something that I've definitely dove into this past year because I've noticed just like just needing to get like time away to like not think about business and just find ways to fill my cup like this podcast is
Yeah,
one way I can do it. Just having conversations with great people.
absolutely, man.
So uh I want to end on I want to ask a few questions.
Yeah.
You prefer watching and listening? You're not I saw you're not, you said you're not like a big like book reader.
I've
Um
never read a book in my
you
life.
prefer Yeah, I don't like books. Don't these are like props. I actually like audiobooks 10 times more, 100 times more.
Yeah.
So what do you love like watching or listening? What do you consume daily or religiously? What's like big
Yeah, I
to
mean,
you?
I'm even books are hard, like Audible books are hard for me because it's so long form. So, a blessing and a curse. Like I have this crazy high IQ, which is good in a lot of ways, but it's bad in a lot of ways too, because my brain is just going a million miles a minute all the time. And so, anytime like I try to read a page of a book, every word I see starts triggering all these thoughts and visions in my head. It's like I read one page of a book, it's like you reading 100. So if I try to read 100 pages of a book, like you can just imagine where my brain is. So that's hard for me. And even in, audiobooks, like that's hard for me because I'm never going to sit down and listen to one from front to back, even though I'll push it, right? Like, can I get to 1.5 speed, 2 times speed? Like I'm trying to push it, but I never listen from front to back. So I find podcasts are best for me, short form, 30 minutes or less. Like that's my sweet spot, because I can listen to the whole thing. I prefer content where I'm getting intro, body, and conclusion. I'm getting the whole message in one sitting. So if I got to do a book where I'm listening to 30 minutes here and 30 minutes there, 30 minutes, like my brain just doesn't connect all of that together. So 30 minutes, 60 minutes tops is really the sweet spot. So I love listening to podcasts or, obviously watching YouTube channels. That's really the sweet spot for me. That's where I can consume, I can stay engaged for that period of time, and really get value out of things.
So, who are three people that you love to consume?
I love the Bigger Pockets channel. Just being, an investment guy, that's huge for me. They cover such a wide range of things. So I kind of pick and choose, what it is that I'm passionate about, whether it's flipping, wholesaling, short-term rentals, mid-term rentals. Like they put out a massive amount of content. So I'm really obsessed with investing. I like Mark Kohler, Kohler. Like he teaches me so much about taxes and how to preserve wealth, and not give all my money back to the government. And he's very progressive and definitely toes the line, on what's possible. And then I've been a Gary Vee fan forever. I've had the opportunity to have dinner with him before. Like he's just his way of thinking. He started out with the thank you economy years ago, and then jab, 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 right hook. Like his whole concept of giving. And ultimately it's so much easier to get what you want in return. Like that, with what we do with our group at EXP, how we give to everybody, now doing this wealth and wellness stuff. Like I just have this passion for giving, and I know the more that I give, everything's going to come back to me in return, tenfold. And so I've always been a huge fan of his for, probably a decade now. So those would be three that I really follow on a consistent basis.
Nice. Yeah, I love Gary
Oh,
Vee.
Darren
It's kind of
Hardy. Darren
it's in
Hardy's my fourth one.
Darren Hardy.
So I've been following Darren Hardy a lot. He had a message that was really good recently. We're talking about like everything makes sense if you have enough information. So there's so many times, an example in the real estate space is like you go meet with a seller and they're like, I want to sell the home, but I don't want to go on the MLS. And like so many of us in our brain, we're like, what's wrong with you, Andrew? Are you stupid? Like, how are you going to get the most money for your house if you don't put it on the market? It's like, if you knew that they actually sold a home before and the home got robbed during an open house, like it might make sense for you why they don't want to go on the market, right? Like if you actually
Yeah.
knew that, or maybe they're going through a divorce and they don't want anybody in the neighborhood to know until the moving truck pulls up, or maybe it's a hoarder house. Like if you knew that information, it would actually make sense to you why they don't want to go on the MLS. So everything makes sense if you have enough information.
Nice. I like that. And so, last question, because you've been such a leader in the industry and now nationally, and then now even reaching throughout outside of the industry, what does, and not just business, but also as a father, as a husband, what does being an amazing leader mean to you?
I look at Bill Parcells. He's one of the most prolific coaches ever in the NFL, and the cool thing with him is that there's so many people who coached under him at some point, were his assistant coaches or whatnot, that have since now he's out of coaching, and a lot of those coaches who were under him at some point have gone on to have their own prolific coaching careers in the NFL, and I think that's really cool. So I love knowing that I had such a big impact on people that they can go and have, similar, if not superior success to what I had.
Leaders breed leaders. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you for spending your time sharing everything that you've learned and just being an amazing leader in the industry. And thanks for joining us.
Sounds good, man. Appreciate you. Yeah, if you guys want to connect, Instagram at Kyle Whissel, DM me anything I can help with. If you want to check out the retreat, any of that stuff, would love to connect.